Philip Pullman's books and their dramatisations have inspired millions.
I'm interested in people and the way they grow, and the way they feel things, the way they see things.
They've introduced readers to parallel worlds, animal companion spirits called daemons, and a truth-telling machine.
What is it?
It's an alethiometer.
Now, Lyra's story is coming to an end with the concluding book.
Lyra couldn't go back to an ordinary life because she's not an ordinary girl. How does someone like that live an ordinary life after extraordinary experiences?
But as ever, he also keeps a keen eye on the real world.
This is the biggest deal, it'll never happen.
He thinks he can come along and say, I've ended the war, give me the Nobel Prize. What a lot of asinine nonsense.
And he's not too fussed about legacy.
If my books are still on library shelves and bookshop shelves when I'm dead, well, that's an achievement in itself. If they're still around in 100 years' time, I'd be very pleased.
We're at Exeter College in Oxford, where Pullman studied, and which he later reimagined as Lyra's home.
I wanted to tell stories, because I like reading stories. I like the place, I like the architecture, I like the 101 wonderful things there are in the city to look at. The Ashmolean Museum, the Bodleian Library, the Pitt Rivers Museum, and so on and so on.
So much of which features in your books.
Oh yeah. I had a friend who lived in the very top room there, the white windows that are open at the moment next to the tower. I asked if I could have his rooms in my second year. So they kindly let me have that room, and it was great because you can see it's behind a sort of battlement or gutter, and you can climb out of that window and get a little crawl along the gutter.
Not yet, I haven't.
And doesn't Lyra also do that in one of the books?
Oh, she does. She gets right out and goes on the roof and scampers about like a squirrel.
And the other famous writer who was in this college is Tolkien.
So yes, long before my time.
I'm glad.
I did meet him once.
The writer Michael Morpurgo compares you with Tolkien. He says that the breadth of your imagination and learning makes you the Tolkien of our age.
I don't think there's any comparison at all between me and Tolkien. He was a writer of fantasy, and as I keep on insisting against every smidgen of evidence, I'm not a writer of fantasy. I insist that I'm writing about the real world through a little filter.
And it's at his home just outside Oxford where he conjures up his stories, where most of his magic happens.
Your book, The Northern Lights, was published in 1995.
Yes,
More than 30 years on, we're seeing the publication of The Rose Field. Has it been hard to say goodbye?
In a way, yes, because you know the characters. They're old friends. They've been with you all that time. I shall miss them a little bit, I think, but I can always make up new stories if I want to, if I have the patience. 49
million copies sold of those books so far. Presumably that number is only going to go up. Why do you think they've resonated so much?
Well, if I knew why, I would have written them 30 years before I did.
All routes led to Lyra.
You don't obey the rules. Doesn't mean I don't know them. We need to win this time. Just count us down. 3, 2, 1. Oh, gee!
Part of the thing is that we are, as we read, we're following Lyra.
Lyra! Sorry, Mrs. Woodbridge.
Who is 11 years old, or 12 at the start. And she's in the middle of a mystery and she doesn't know what's going on, but she wants to find out, so we are with her and we find out as she does. And it's to do with growing up.
Lyra, boss!
Fizz Master!
Which everybody does, everybody goes through. And so there's a certain amount that a lot of readers have in common with her. And the second trilogy, the one that's just completed, is different, but it's still Lyra. Now she's an adult and she's got different sorts of problems to face and different kinds of mental strength and equipment to face them with.
Why is Lyra so beloved?
I don't know why people like her or love her. I like her and love her because she's always prepared to have a go at defeating something. She's always curious and inquisitive. I think it's a very important quality. I remember giving a sermon once about the Christian virtues. I was in favour of all of them except faith. I said we should substitute faith with curiosity. We should praise it in the first curious person in the Bible, who was Eve in the Garden of Eden. She was curious. She wanted to know what would happen, what it would be like to know the difference between good and evil.
Yes, I want to come on to talk about imagination, but I'm interested first in how you describe this series, because it's got mythical creatures, it's got travel between worlds, it's got demons.
Lyra, it's your uncle.
What is a demon?
Well, we all have a demon whether we know it or not, and it's a very old idea, you know, the idea of a companion spirit or a guardian angel or something of that sort.
Lyra, don't do anything stupid.
I just took that idea and gave it the form of an animal. It's physical in the extent that you can sort of touch it and stroke it and whatever, but that leads to some interesting prohibitions and things you mustn't do. You mustn't touch someone else's demon. It's very, very bad to do that. And you can't go too far from your demon. You can't be separated from it without great pain and difficulty and suffering.
And you must have been asked this a million times, what would your demon be?
I think she'd be a corvid.
Why?
A raven. I love ravens. I used to
They're
love...
not very well loved.
I don't care. I love them. They're wonderful birds to watch. And they're very clever. And in some mythologies, the raven is the storyteller. And there are all sorts of reasons to like ravens.
You don't describe the book as fantasy. Why not?
A lot of fantasy, I mean, I haven't read every fantasy book, but a lot of the fantasy that I have read is unsatisfactory for me because it's not interested in psychology, it's not interested in how people think or feel. It's all about other planets and other ages and, you know, the doom sword of Gongalblath or something, and you've got to find the doom sword before you can defeat the evil sorcerer. It's mechanical. You know, you can write a fantasy just by turning a lot of wheels. That doesn't interest me because I'm interested in people and the way they grow and the way they feel things and the way they see things.
Well, I'm excited because I think I'm about to see something that not many people actually have got to see in real life, but is very key to your books.
I presume you mean the alethiometer?
I do,
yes.
I do. It exists.
It does exist. This one was made by a friend of mine, a jeweller, who came up to me at a party one day and said, "Why don't you commission me to make an alethiometer?" So I thought, well, why don't I? It's based on the description in the and the illustration, indeed, on the cover of the first book. There are 36 symbols around the edge of the instrument. They're painted here on, well, they're supposed to be on little slips of ivory.
So this is the machine which Lyra uses to try and find out what to do, tell the truth in it.
It's a truth meter, that's right.
It worked. It worked, man. What? No. That's impossible. No, it's not. Look. Wow.
Does it help you tell the truth?
No, but it does. If I'm stuck, you know, it's a way of having a man come through the door with a gun in his hand.
And over the years since you came up with the alethiometer, it's felt that truth has been a little bit more in dispute, we might say. People talk about fake
Well,
news.
we all need an alethiometer. We need something to test the truth against what's against what we know, against our experiences, against the things, against likelihood and against unlikelihood. So we all need some way of testing these things, but we all do anyway. We're all checking things that we hear all the time. Unless we're so paranoid that we don't believe anyone.
Yeah, but I suppose in a world where there's just so much information out there, how do you tell what's true and what's not?
It's a question we've never had to answer before. If you think back sort of 600 years, in terms of information, what information did people have? If you were a kind of farm worker, living in you wouldn't be able to read. So the only time you would hear a story would be if someone sat and told you the story, or if you went to church on Sunday and heard the the priest preaching and telling you stories from or reading from the Bible, or looking at the pictures in the stained glass. But nowadays we are, deluged.
Why was it time to end the series? And in this book, The Rosefield, do you come to any conclusions?
Well, I finished the first trilogy with the Amber Spyglass and Lyra back in Oxford, having had this extraordinary adventure and going to the world of the dead and learning a lot.
My name is Lyra. I came here looking for my friend. His death was unfair, so I thought he shouldn't be here. What I didn't realise is that none of you should be here.
But she's still only 12 years old. What's she going to do for the rest of her life? Is she going to sort of go to school and play netball and have a boyfriend? It's just dull. That's what I find unsatisfactory about C.S. Lewis, for example. His children in the, The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, they go to Narnia and they have this wonderful experience and they're princes and kings and so on.
Aslan, we need your help.
I know, but understand, the future of Narnia rests on your courage.
And then they come back and they have a railway accident, and that's the end of it. That's monstrously bad storytelling, it seems to me. Lyra couldn't go back to an ordinary life because she's not an ordinary girl. How does someone like that live an ordinary life after extraordinary experiences? Well, we find out. The great link between her and her demon is, or seems to be, broken. And what does she do about that?
And in the book, one of the things you're exploring is imagination. Is imagination more than make-believe? We know that children have it, and we think we often lose it as adults. Why do you think you've remained so imaginative?
It all depends on what you think the imagination is. A lot of people think that it's just the power of making things up. It's just daydreaming, or it's just like taking a horse and a man and you put them together. Oh, you made a centaur, aren't you clever? Well, I don't see imagination like that at all. I think imagination is a form of perception. And this is where the Rosefield comes in. You see, I think that everything in the world, books, carpets, furniture, people, flowers, trees, stars, the sun, the sky, buildings, everything is surrounded by a sort of field in which things exist that you can only see with your imagination. They're there, but you can't see them if you don't imagine them. For example, ghosts, wishes, hopes, memories, associations, similarities, likenesses. That sort of thing, sort of tenuous and wispy things, are not tenuous and wispy really. They're hard and solid, and you can see them if you imagine them. And the Rosefield is a field that encompasses everything. It includes everything, especially these things that you can't necessarily weigh or measure or analyze chemically, but which are there nonetheless, such as love, such as fear, such as hope. These things that belong in the Rosefield and are seen by the imagination.
And one of the conversations that Lyra has in this book about imagination, imagination and intolerance, I suppose, is she says what you learn is that things can be both true and not true. If you're not with us, you're against us. There's no room for the other answer. It's a sort of binary absolutism, which when you read that, you do feel is very timely. I felt it was very timely in our sort of era of polarisation.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you're not with us, you're against us. Means that if you're not actually shouting USA, USA, then you're a communist, you're a traitor, you're a left-wing agitator, you're an Antifa, you're a rapist, you're a murderer, you're Mexican, you get out. It's that binary absolutism, which Lyra calls it in a very fine phrase, I think. Binary absolutism, which is going to be the death of things unless we root it out, unless we fight it.
Another thing that many creators are worried about might be the death of things is artificial intelligence. And imagination obviously creates worlds for books.
Discovers, sees worlds.
Sees worlds, discovers worlds, boundless human creativity.
Yes, AI is very interesting. Of course it has no imagination, it has no power to see the Rosefield. You can't measure the Rosefield. You can't, put it against a spectrum and say, yes, it's at 0.703. You can't do that with those things. And of course, AI doesn't understand that. I'm not worried about AI because it's a big fad at the moment, just as .com things were a few years ago. A lot of them fell down flat because they didn't work after all. I don't think AI is going to work in the way people hope it will, and I'm not particularly worried about it.
Some authors, other creators have been fighting back against scraping of copyright. Are you part of that campaign?
That's a different matter.
Yeah, has your work been scraped by AI? Do you know?
As far as I know, yes. Everybody's work has.
And how do you feel about that?
Stolen. Scraped, exactly scraped is the word. Like a trawler or whatever, scraping the bottom of the sea. Everything comes up. Prawns, oysters, starfishes, mermaids, whatever, you name it, it's all killed. That's immoral. They don't understand that. They understand illegal, but unfortunately it's not illegal because it doesn't quite fall into the categories of things that you can be prosecuted for. It should do, and it should do damn soon.
So you want the government to change the law and fight back?
Of course I do. They should change it at once. Nobody should steal anybody else's work.
I want to get more of a sense of you and how you became this incredible writer of these books that are so loved around the world, your own influences. When you were a child, do you look back and think there were influences on you, experiences you had as a child that meant you were destined to become a novelist, somewhere where your creativity came from? Is it innate?
Before I was 11, we'd gone to South Africa and back by sea. We'd gone to Australia and back by sea. And I remember things that young people travelling now don't experience. You get a much fuller, deeper sense of how big the world is. It takes you a long time to go all the way around the world, end up in Australia. And what the sea is like, and what the sea is like around this country is rather grey and rather cold. And the further you go south, the bluer it gets and the warmer it gets. And you go even further south and the shape of the sea changes. Instead of doing that all day long, which you get used to, it starts doing that, which is not so comfortable. And that's horrible for a few days. But you learn all these things physically in your body, and that's where you remember them. And so your Rosefield perception of that of the sea includes all those things. So that must have helped. But of course I was reading as well, Biggles and the famous Five and stuff like that. But also poetry. I read a lot of Hiawatha when I was about 9 or 10, partly because I love the da-da-da-da-da-da-da rhythm of it. And because the stories are well told. The pictures it brought to mind were very vivid and moving in some cases.
But there is so much to think about in your books and so many wonderful creations. We were talking about demons, but also the alethiometer, the conveyor of truth. You created that before the modern era of fake news. But do you worry now about truth, about how we can tell fact from fiction, lies even?
Yes, that is very much with us at the moment, I think, because the authorities we used to turn to are now either not used at all, like dictionaries and encyclopedias, or mocked as being purveyors of something that's patriarchal, it's old-fashioned, it's imperialist, it's this, it's that, it's Marxist, it's whatever. So what do you know? Who do we believe? That's difficult.
And in the magisterium, you've created a ruling power that controls lives and suppresses thought. And more than 30 years after you created those worlds, what's your sense of whether those authoritarian tendencies are rising in our world?
Well, we just have to look across the Atlantic and we see a president who packs his Supreme Court with politically sympathetic yes men, who orders his more or less private army, as it is now, the National Guard, to go to cities that he deems to be lawless and arrest people at random. What is that but dictatorship? What is that but tyranny, totalitarianism?
So are you saying our leaders should be calling that out and calling it authoritarianism?
Yes, they should. And they should beware. We should all beware of it. That sort of thing happening here. Sending people to jail for holding up a placard that says genocide is wrong. How did that happen?
You're talking about Palestine Action
yes,
and people...
That's right. How did we let, in a country like this with a tradition of free speech, how did we let that happen? But it's happening here as well.
Actually, the government would say, well, we prescribed Palestine action because of the attack on the RAF aircraft, not to do with people holding up signs.
Well, that's not true, is it? We know it's to do with, because we know the people who are holding up signs, 80-year-old woman or something holding up a sign, she hasn't been and vandalised an aircraft. Anyway, vandalising an aircraft, what does she do, unscrew the wing or something?
I suppose we're on the Middle East now. You've talked about Donald Trump. As we're speaking, he's apparently, managing to get through a ceasefire, perhaps peace in the Middle East. And some people are asking, perhaps this is our age where strong men are the only ones who can get things done. What would you say to that, as somebody who writes about that, exactly those sorts of issues? There
have always been strong men, and they've always got things done. A classic example is Mussolini and train times. See, if Mussolini was in charge here, you'd have caught your train on time this morning. Now, do we want strong men all the time to do that? No, I don't think we do. I think we'd rather be governed by people whom we can elect and kick out if we don't like what they're doing. I think democracy is always better, but it's not as quick. A strong man can come to power and say, this is wrong, send him to jail, you should do this instead, send them to jail. A strong man can do that, and it's quite easy to do when you've got surrounded by a lot of sycophants and yes men. But is his judgment right about everything? No, of course not. Man's a damn fool apart from anything else.
But he might be getting peace in the Middle East.
He won't get peace in the Middle East. He thinks he can come along and say, I've ended the war, give me the Nobel Prize. What a lot of asinine nonsense. He hasn't done that at all. We need 50 years to see whether that treaty will work. You can't change the flow of history in 5 minutes.
We were talking earlier about how much you read as a child, and when you started writing these books, it was a very different time. It was the nascent days of the internet. There was no social media, no algorithms ruling our lives, and perhaps most crucially, kids were still reading. And yet now we've got, a recent study by the National Literacy Trust that says only 1 in 3 children aged 8 to 18 enjoy reading in their free time, and another that suggests a quarter of white working class boys don't read outside school. Yeah. It's a stupid question to ask an author, does it worry you? But how shocked are you by that, and what can we do about it?
I'm not surprised, I'm not shocked, I'm just saddened, really. But the reason people don't read is that they haven't been surrounded by other people who read. The best way to become a reader is to be born into a family of readers.
But I think there'll be parents watching this, listening to this, thinking, I've done all that, my child did read, but as soon as they got a phone, and I'm speaking from experience, the power of the phone is so strong, and the fights that you have to fight to get off the phone, that they lose.
We've invented a lot of things whose consequences we haven't foreseen or worked out, and that's certainly one of them, the phone. I hate it. I've got a mobile phone, but I only use it for me to make phone calls to other people, not for them to phone me. The only way to make people want to read stories is to give them good stories and make them available. A library, a good library in schools, properly stacked and properly functioned, with a knowledgeable librarian. That'll work enormously.
And 1 in 7 state primary schools in the UK have no library space, which increases to 1 in 4 in more disadvantaged areas. And Labour have said they'll, by the end of the Parliament, they'll promise to have a proper library in every school.
Well, I'm keeping an eye on Bridget Phillipson to see what she does. I'd be very interested to see whether she does manage to improve that situation, because it's a very sad, very bad situation.
Is the end of this Parliament soon enough?
Yeah, I welcome it whenever it comes, but I would also welcome very strongly some indication from this government and this Prime Minister that there are good things and there are bad things, and that he's against bad things and he's for good things.
What does that mean?
Well, it means don't categorise people as rapists and murderers and paedophiles. You can't do that. I mean, Farage is doing this now. All these criminals coming into this country, living in your street, threatening your wife and children. Well, no, they're not. There are crimes, horrible crimes sometimes, but it's not that everyone who comes in to this country illegally is going to rape your wife and kill your children. It's not going to happen. And he should say this. Starmer should say this.
But do you understand why people do have fears about mass immigration?
Yes, they have also fears about sharks. And they also have fears about COVID and so on. And some of these fears are justified and some aren't. And what is not argued strongly enough is the benefits of immigration. He used the word mass in front of it. You can make anything terrible by calling it mass. Mass epidemic or something. Mass ignorance on the part of our school children.
Do you think we're copying President Trump in that regard?
Yes, we are. Well, Farage is, certainly.
What does selling 49 million books actually look like? Because you don't live in a great deal of luxury.
Well, yes, I'm comfortably off. I have more money than I ever thought I would have. I was very poor for most of my life. I was living on a teacher's salary. It's made me stop worrying about pensions and old age. It's made me think I can leave something to my children and give money to charity. It's a very enjoyable thing, having money. I recommend it to everyone.
What do you hope your legacy is as you come to this sort of milestone moment? I'm sure there's more to come, but do you ever think about legacy?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think if my books are still on library shelves and bookshop shelves when I'm dead, well, that's an achievement in itself. If they're still around in 100 years' time, I'd be very pleased. And I hope people will continue to read them and enjoy them and think about what I'm saying in them. Not take a message from it or a lesson from it, but just see the world a little differently. I'd like to think that was a legacy, but I don't care if I'm remembered or not, really.
Philip Pullman, thank you so much for this interview and very good luck with the book, The Rose
Thank you
Field.
very much. It's been a great pleasure to talk to you.